The first leak, I guess, came out last week. We talked about it on Monday with the stuff with Pittsburgh, the reports that came out of Pittsburgh about the Phillies being interested in Bednar and Santana. But a lot has changed, not necessarily that those guys aren't on their list. They certainly are. But that there's more focus right now on the American League Central because there's a couple of teams there that are more intriguing. And those teams are the Cleveland Guardians and the Minnesota Twins. Two teams that probably nobody thought were going to be sellers earlier this year because obviously the Guardians went to the ALCS a year ago. Minnesota has a ton of talent. A lot of people thought that they were maybe the favorite in the American League Central this year. Both have had subpar seasons. The Guardians kind of rebounded after losing 10 in a row. They've won their last 3 to kind of, balance the boat again after it looked like it was sinking. But both teams are sub 500. The wild card race in the American League is odd because even though they're sub 500, they're still well within striking distance. So these next few weeks are going to be really interesting for those teams. If in fact those teams decide to sell, the Phillies apparently, from what reports, and I thought that Matt Gelb's story in The Athletic was sensational, kind of using major league sources from outside the organization, talking about what the Phillies are looking like in negotiations at this point or reaching out to teams. They seem to be more aggressive and to be going after bigger names and willing to part with bigger prospects. I think that what you're seeing is that they're going to look to Cleveland and say, is Emmanuel Clase available? They're going to look to Minnesota and say, is Johan Duran available? Is Griffin Jacks available? Which is a guy that I know probably excites you because, the strikeout rate, right? 14.6, I think, strikeouts per 9 with that guy. So those things are going to happen. And these are two teams that probably were not on a lot of people's radars prior to this week.
Let's start here. Do you think it's wise to swim in those waters? Do you think it's wise to go in and get a bigger name late inning guy or a bigger name bat? Is this the type of target you think makes sense for this team in this moment? Or, and I know there are some people out there that are like, they've been so patient, so hesitant to part with these prospects. Why are you doing it now for a team that's flawed and just can't win? And there are people out there that feel like that.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer that question in two ways. The first way is, yes, I'm good with it, and I'm good with it because of these two reasons. One, Major League Baseball is wide open this year. There is no dominant team. There's no team or two teams that you look at and go, oh yeah, they're the heavy favorites. They're going to win. They're going to be in the World Series and compete against each other. It's really a multi-horse race, and the Phillies are one of those horses. Despite all their flaws, there are so many teams that are flawed in baseball this year that even with the Phillies' flaws, they are one of the favorites to potentially go, right? So I think that that's reason number one that you do it. And reason number two that I'm okay with it, that you're swimming in these waters, is because none of these guys are rentals. Like last year, you had to give up 2 prospects for Carlos Estevez because and you knew he wasn't going to, or probably wasn't going to be re-signed, right? So he was a hired gun. This time around, you're talking about giving up prospects for players that you would have control for another 2 seasons beyond this.
Right.
And so that's why, and I put on our list of things to talk about. I figured we'd do it towards the end, but we could kind of touch on it here. I think the narrative that the Phillies window is closing and you got to do it, you got to be all in this year because of that, is a bit of a fallacy, because I do think that this team is going to be a contender for another few years. And if you have these guys now under your control and can kind of fix your bullpen midseason by adding them, and then they are part of your organization next year and the year after that, well, then guess what? That is a benefit that doesn't just go help you now. Right. That's an all-in move. It helps you stay a contender for a couple of years as well.
Is there anybody in this prospect pool that you, not the Phillies, but you would say, like, I just won't do it? It doesn't matter if it's name your player, Byron Buxton, Quan from Cleveland, name your lights out closer. Is there anybody you should say no way? Is it just Painter? Is it still Painter?
It's just Painter. It's just Painter. And that's because there are and I know everybody says, yeah, there's the argument that how many of these can't miss prospects do actually turn out and work? I get it, right?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that when you look at high-end pitching prospects in baseball, that evaluators, not just internal evaluators, but around the league evaluate over the past 5 to 7 years, say this guy's going to be good when he gets to the major leagues. They've hit 85, 90% of the time. Like the evaluators have gotten so much better because there's so much more information on these kids of identifying what it takes to say that guy's going to be a top end major league pitcher. And I think that when you see that Andrew Painter is in that group, you have to assume that, right? So it's not like it's a guy you say you cross your fingers and hope, oh, or maybe he might turn out to something. I think this is a little bit more of a sure thing. Whereas the rest of the prospects, I am still like, hey, they're just prospects. So
well, since we're on him, let's just stay here. What do you make of his run at AAA, Andrew Painter? The other night, he got into some trouble. Some balls were hit hard. He had minimized the damage, though. And then he gets into the sixth, and things start to kind of unravel on him. And then it's one of these ones where you step back and you look at the box score again, and you go, not great. You know, his ERA is up around high fours, I believe, right now in AAA. I think we were all hoping for him to just take that next step, blow the doors off the opponents, force the Phillies' hand. That hasn't happened. And for me, that doesn't mean really anything in terms of what he'll be when he's finally up here. But what I do wonder is, are there some hesitations now, some reservations that maybe he's going to come up and be a factor for this team this season in a meaningful way?
I do think that there's a little bit more hesitancy than maybe. I mean, I think that they were hoping that he would have blow the doors off of AAA like he did at lower levels. But I also think that they wanted him to have some adversity. And he's had it, and that's okay. The difference is he hasn't been overwhelmed by it, right? And I think that that's what they're kind of building with this kid is that it's like, all right, look, you're going to have your challenges, you're going to struggle at times. How do you handle that? And he finds his way through it. And I think that that's the growth thing that they want at this level. That last box, you say, what's the last box that needs to be checked? And the last box that needs to be checked is, how does he respond to adversity and how does he deal with in-game adversity? And for the most part, he's done it. Yes, he's had some innings that have gotten away from him. You talked about the sixth inning the other night, and that was one of them. But on the whole, and that's going to happen with any pitcher, especially a young pitcher, and especially a young pitcher in their first season back from TJ, right? I mean, so that's the other thing to keep in mind. I still think when you look at the projection on him, it's still high-end pitching prospect, very likely to be successful in the major league level. That's the reason I don't want to move on from him.
Do you think we see him up here in the next 30 days?
I do. I think he's going to be the guy that fills that roster spot for the fifth starter after the deadline.
Okay.
Or I mean, after the All-Star break, rather. I do. I don't think you're going to go back to Ty. I don't think that Mick Abel's going to be recalled just because he had one really good start down in AAA. I think you're looking at this is Andrew Painter time just to see. Let's see what it looks like.
So out of the break, he would make then 2-3 starts, and then you have Aaron Nola enter the mix.
So I think you're probably there's either 3 or 4 more starts that have to happen before Nola would be ready.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah. So yeah, I think you're better off. Let's see what Andrew Painter does in 3 or 4 starts, and then make a determination. Is he major league ready? Is he going to be a guy, an arm that helps us now? Or are we still waiting for one more offseason before he's really ready to be at the major league level?
It's just a very interesting arc as you watch this play out, because if Nola wasn't there, you'd say, all right, like, we don't need to do Taijuan Walker starts after the All-Star break. Right. Bring the kid up, let him fill the spot. They have 4 pretty good starters. If he struggles a little bit, it's not the end of the world for us. Let's get him rolling. But with Nola in that mix, and those other 4 guys going well, it just becomes like, well, what do? Do you go to a 6-man? How do you massage it? Because once you bring him up, let's say he's really good, like, you don't want to just pull the plug on that after 4 starts and then say, all right, thanks for coming out, kiddo. We're gonna transition to the bullpen now. Like, I mean, how do you do it?
No, I think that you're probably right that it would probably be a short, and because they've said this all along, that they do look at a point in the schedule where they say we could go for a short period of time to a 6-man rotation. That won't impact Wheeler. They'll still throw Wheeler on his regular days because he doesn't like the extra day off. They'll work around that, but at the same time, I think that every other pitcher could use an extra day. Like, right. When you look at every other pitcher in this rotation, like, you're trying to protect injury-wise 2 guys in Suarez and Luzardo who have injury histories. So you don't want to overwork those guys. So say, all right, give you guys each an extra day in between starts. Cool. Christopher Sanchez is probably not as important to give extra day, although every once in a while they do like to pull him back a little bit. Again, that's just more monitoring him, trying to keep him around 180 innings as opposed to pushing 200. And then Nola historically pitches better on 5 days rest than on 4 days rest. So really, if you have a 6-man rotation for a couple weeks in August until you hit September 1, that's okay. That's not the worst thing in the world.
All right, staying on the young arms train here. Last night, Mick Abel makes his first start back in AAA after he was sent down against Syracuse, and he takes a no-hitter, I believe, into the 5th inning, or maybe it was the 6th. He goes 6 innings overall, gives up 1 hit. More importantly, gives up 1 walk, and was very impressive. And he has been dominant at AAA all season. And we certainly know the story up here, some good, some bad. I think last night was an incredibly important start in terms of if you're a team looking at him and saying, hey, we're interested in acquiring this guy. I think you want to see, like, how did he respond to the adversity? How did he respond to getting sent down? Would he go down and kind of mope and pout and not perform? So I think that if nothing else, like, though there were probably some red flags that popped up in those last couple of appearances at the major league level, you have to look at this and say, all right, just from the purely the execution standpoint, getting the command back, being efficient, showing some flash, but then just that he did it off the heels of the demotion, I think is important. And I think it says something about him, whether the Phillies kind of now look at it and say maybe there is still that possibility of converting him to a bullpen role here in 25 and then evaluate what you have with him moving forward, or using him at the deadline. I think he's going to get traded. That is my guess. I don't know how you feel about it or what your overall impressions of him last night or his situation in general might be.
Yeah, I think so too. But if he survives the deadline, because you got to remember, like, do I think that the Phillies are kind of pushing Mick Abel as a guy that they would move at the deadline on other teams? I do, but it always takes 2 to tango, right? So the other team has to want Mick Abel first and foremost. So if he survives the deadline, I do think that finding out that there is a little bit of mental toughness to this kid to be able to go down there and do what he did does give you a better sense of, can he handle coming into a 1-inning role in a big spot in October? Like, I think that's a sign. It's a small sign, but I think it's a sign. So I do think that's Mick Abel will be, this is the prediction I'll make. Come August 1st, Mick Abel will either be on another team or the Phillies will be talking about converting him into a
I don't think that Mick Abel's making starts at the AAA level or, for the Phillies in 2025 beyond August 1st.
Correct. And that's what I think is going to be. And that's okay. And I think both scenarios are good scenarios for the Phillies, because if you're trading Mick Abel, it means some team values him enough that you're probably getting a really good player back. And if you don't trade Mick Abel, I do think that there's enough there that it profiles well to improve your bullpen.